Grand Duke Henri's abdication, Guillaume's accession, and the history of Luxembourg. Europe has a new monarch. On the 3rd of October 2025, Grand Duke Henri of Luxembourg abdicated the throne, and his son, Guillaume, was sworn in as the nation's new Grand Duke. Let's explore the history of this small but ancient monarchy. Learn what a Grand Duke actually is. Meet the old and new Grand Dukes and their Grand Duchesses, and find out what happened at this royal event. Luxembourg is a landlocked nation bordered by Belgium, France, and Germany. They have their own language, Luxembourgish, which is a Germanic tongue. But French, Spanish, Dutch, and English are also widely spoken. It's Europe's 7th smallest nation, at just 2,586 square kilometers, just short of 1,000 square miles, with a population of 680,000, half of whom are foreign-born. Minuscule as it may be, Luxembourg actually has the 6th oldest surviving monarchy in Europe, and the 10th oldest in the world. The fact that this small nation has managed to maintain its independence, surrounded by so many large and powerful neighbors, is remarkable. The story of Luxembourg's monarchy begins in 963 with Siegfried, Count of the Ardennes. He was a 6th-generation descendant of Charlemagne, the Frankish ruler who conquered most of Western Europe. After his death, his descendants sliced up the empire. Siegfried was the 6th and youngest son of the ruler of Middle Francia. His older brothers inherited everything worth having, so Siegfried set out to establish his own realm. He purchased Bock Rock, and on the foundation of an ancient Roman fort, he constructed a castle. He named it Lutzelenburg, meaning small castle in Old High German. A city grew up around it, and Siegfried and his descendants prospered. By 1083, his great-grandson, Conrad I, was the first to call himself Count of Luxembourg. In the Middle Ages, a count was the most common rank of nobility. They were the middle management in the feudal hierarchy between the common people and the king. A count administered an area called a county and collected taxes from its inhabitants. He passed a portion up to the king and owed His Majesty military service when called upon. The Counts of Luxembourg owed their fealty to the Holy Roman Emperor. The imperial throne was passed by election amongst the powerful families of Central Europe. Over the years, 2 counts from the House of Luxembourg were elected emperor: Henry VII in 1312 and Charles IV in 1355. When Charles took the top job, he handed Luxembourg to his brother, Wenceslas I, and elevated him from count to duke. In 1441, Elizabeth I, who had no children, sold the duchy to Philip III, Duke of Burgundy. However, her cousin, Anne of Austria, and other relatives claimed the title was rightfully theirs for the next 3 decades. Philip was unperturbed. He ruled most of the Low Country and was extremely wealthy and influential. King Edward IV of England so admired his court that he reformed his own household to match the Burgundian style. Because Philip couldn't join the English Order of the Garter, he created his own Order of the Golden Fleece. It remains one of the most prestigious chivalric orders in the world, and counts Luxembourgish, Spanish, and Austrian royals amongst its ranks. Philip's son, Charles the Bold, had only one surviving child, Mary. She became Duchess of Burgundy, Duchess of Luxembourg, and ruler of several other realms at the age of 20. She was known as Mary the Rich and was the most sought-after bride in Europe. The only groom powerful enough to protect her lands from the French was future Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I of the House of Habsburg. They had 2 children together before Mary fell from her horse, broke her back, and died at the age of 25. Her son, Philip the Handsome, married Juana of Castile, who inherited her parents' kingdoms of Castile and Aragon, becoming queen of most of Spain. All the couple's land eventually went to their son, Charles, who became Holy Roman Emperor, King of Spain, and Duke of Luxembourg. He exhausted himself trying to rule such a vast empire. So he abdicated and divided his realms between his brother Ferdinand, who got the bulk of the Holy Roman Empire, and his son Philip, who got Spain, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. For the next 3 generations, the kings of Spain were also dukes of Luxembourg. But the Habsburgs' love of inbreeding eventually caught up with them. King Carlos II, one of the most tragically ill monarchs in history, died without an heir. His French and Austrian relatives went to war over his many titles. Louis XIV of France conquered Luxembourg, but he handed it back to the Habsburgs minus a significant chunk in the peace treaty. Holy Roman emperors included Duke of Luxembourg amongst their many titles until 1794. That year, the French Revolutionary Army invaded the duchy. Napoleon toppled the Holy Roman Empire and counted Luxembourg amongst his many conquests. After Napoleon's defeat, Luxembourg's fate was decided by his enemies at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. They decided that the nation would no longer be ruled by the Habsburgs, but instead be handed to Willem I, King of the Netherlands, as part of a personal union. However, a large chunk was taken by the Prussians. To calm Willem's nerves, what was left of Luxembourg was elevated from a duchy to a Grand Duchy. The title Grand Duke was first established in 1569 by a papal bull issued by Pope Pius V. He created Cosimo I de' Medici, the Grand Duke of Tuscany. A Grand Duchy denotes a realm of a particularly powerful duke, or a significant territory which is not large enough to be a kingdom. Finland was a Grand Duchy under Russian control from 1809 to 1917. There have been several Grand Duchies in the Holy Roman Empire and then the German Empire. After World War I, most of these monarchies were abolished. Today, Luxembourg is the world's only remaining Grand Duchy. In 1830, the western half of the Netherlands rebelled and formed their own nation, Belgium. They took more than half of what was left of Luxembourg, giving the country its modern borders. In the heat of rebellion, Luxembourger patriots wanted to display their own national colors. So they adopted a tri-color flag of red, white, and blue. It is identical to the flag of the Netherlands. However, the lighter colors are derived from the lion banner of the old Counts of Luxembourg. Hoping to placate the people of his second realm, King and Grand Duke Willem II decided he needed to spend more time in Luxembourg. So, in 1845, he purchased Burg Castle in the middle of the nation. It remains the Grand Duke's principal residence to this day. His son, Willem III, was a notorious womanizer, abusive husband and father, and was cruel to servants, courtiers, and animals. He was also terrible with money and got himself into ruinous debt. In swooped Napoleon III, Emperor of France, who offered to buy Luxembourg off him for 5 million guilders. Willem eagerly agreed, but Prussia objected and threatened war. The Treaty of London resolved the crisis by confirming that Luxembourg would remain an independent, perpetually neutral nation and stay under the rule of the Dutch monarch. Dwarfed by powerful, bickering neighbors, Luxembourgers developed a strong sense of independent identity. They adopted the motto, "Wir willen blijven wat wir zijn." We want to remain what we are. In spite of their mad king, they managed to push through a constitution in 1868. Willem III had 3 sons, Willem, Maurice, and Alexander. Maurice died of meningitis at 6. When the heir to the throne turned 18, he escaped his horrible father and fled to a life of sex, drinking, and gambling in Belle Époque, Paris. Willem died of typhus, liver disease, and exhaustion at 38. Not long after, the last male heir, Alexander, died of typhus at 32. 62-year-old King Willem promptly married 21-year-old Princess Emma of Waldeck and Pyrmont. She had only one child, a daughter, Wilhelmina. So the king ordered the constitution changed so that his daughter could inherit the throne. But Luxembourg's succession was still Salic and did not allow women. This was seen as the perfect opportunity for the nation to finally get its own monarch and truly be independent. The next man in line for the throne was Adolf, Duke of Nassau. He was Willem's 17th cousin once removed, but it was from a male-only line. The 73-year-old, who had lost his own hereditary duchy in Germany to Prussia back in 1866, was sworn in as Grand Duke of Luxembourg in 1890. He and his family moved into Berg Castle and the Ducal Palace. Originally constructed in 1572 as the Luxembourg City Hall, it was the home to a parade of representatives of foreign rulers. But once Luxembourg had its own exclusive reigning family, the Ducal Palace became a second official residence and home of the Grand Duke's offices. Adolf had very little knowledge of or interest in the politics of his new domain, so he let the elected government run things. He was succeeded by his son, Guillaume, French for Willem or William IV. He was a Protestant, but felt that a Catholic country ought to have a Catholic monarch. So he married Infanta Marie Anne of Portugal. They had 6 daughters: Marie Adelaide, Charlotte, Hilda, Antonia, Elizabeth, and Sophie. Not wanting to pass the throne to another distant cousin, Guillaume changed the succession laws again to male preference primogeniture, allowing his 17-year-old daughter, Marie Adelaide, to succeed him when he died in 1912. She was the first reigning duchess since Maria Theresa in 1780. Unlike her predecessors, Marie Adelaide took a great interest in politics. This backfired when she took the blame for the nation's many ills during World War I. Once again caught between warring neighbors, Luxembourg was occupied by German troops. The Duchess and her government protested, but they did not want to see violence on their soil, so they backed down. Marie Adelaide's enemies pointed out every connection she had with German relatives and turned the country against her. After the war, they called for a republic. But 78% of Luxembourgers voted to preserve the monarchy under the Grand Duchess's younger sister, Charlotte. A new constitution was written, officially limiting the monarch's political power. Marie Adelaide moved to Italy and became a nun, but she died of influenza at 29. Charlotte became Grand Duchess in 1919, age 22. The same year, she married her first cousin, Prince Felix of Bourbon-Parma. They had 6 children. A Grand Duke or Duchess and their family are not inherently royal. The term royalty is reserved for the relatives of kings and queens. However, as Prince Felix was a cadet member of the Royal House of Bourbon-Parma, after 1919, the Luxembourger family officially became royal. They are styled as Royal Highness. The heir apparent is called the hereditary Grand Duke or Duchess. Other children are Prince or Princess. The rank of Grand Duke is below a king or queen, but above a sovereign prince. So step back, Prince Hans Adam of Liechtenstein and Prince Albert of Monaco. Charlotte made the wise PR decision to sell the family's German palaces, Biebrich and Velberg, to the German state and focus on Luxembourg, where she was popular. In 1940, Luxembourg's neutrality was once again violated by the Germans. Not wanting to repeat her sister's mistake of being perceived as condoning occupation, Charlotte, her family, and the government fled. The royals went first to France, then Portugal, then the UK. She broadcasted supportive messages via the BBC home to her people and became a focus of the resistance. With the support of President Roosevelt, Charlotte campaigned across the U.S. for their involvement in the war. Charlotte's sister Antonia, who was married to the Crown Prince of Bavaria, also spoke out against the Nazis. She and her children were sent to Dachau concentration camp. They survived the torture, but their health was permanently damaged. After the war, Grand Duchess Charlotte and her family returned to Luxembourg and a swell of popularity. They were very publicly active in the post-war international stage, thus raising the profile of the nation. Charlotte hosted numerous foreign royals, as well as Eleanor Roosevelt and John F. Kennedy. In 1964, the 68-year-old Grand Duchess made the decision to retire and abdicate in favor of her son, Jean. Having spent his youth in exile during the war, Jean studied law and political science at the Université Laval in Quebec. He attended the Royal Military College at Sandhurst in the UK and then joined the British Army as part of the Irish Guard. He and his men landed in Normandy on the 11th of June, 1944, and took part in the liberation of Brussels and Luxembourg, and the invasion of Germany. In 1953, the hereditary Grand Duke married Princess Josephine Charlotte, his third cousin and the only daughter of King Leopold III of the Belgians. The people suspected that their union was arranged to improve relations between the two nations, which had been shaky ever since Belgium annexed half of Luxembourg. But it soon became apparent that love was blooming between the two longtime friends. They had 5 children. Jean was sworn in as Grand Duke in 1964. His reign saw unprecedented stability and prosperity. The small nation was transformed into a major banking center, and its financial, steel, and tourism industries have made it the wealthiest nation per capita, with a whopping $140,000 GDP per person. After centuries in the middle of European conflicts, Luxembourg had a strong interest in peace between its neighbors. So it was one of the original 6 nations that founded the European Union in 1993. Jean was a champion for European unity. Some even said that he could be elected hereditary president of Europe. Luxembourg City became one of the 4 institutional seats of the European Union and hosts several EU institutions, including the Court of Justice. In 2000, the 79-year-old Grand Duke followed his mother's example and stepped down in favor of his son, Henri. He died in 2019 at the age of 98. Henri was born in 1955. Through his mother, he is a first cousin of Philippe, King of the Belgians. He was educated in Luxembourg and France, then followed his father to the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst. He studied political science at the University of Geneva in Switzerland. There he met fellow student Maria Teresa Matiste y Batista. She was born in 1956 in Havana, Cuba. When she was 3, revolution broke out. She, her parents, and her 3 siblings fled the regime of Fidel Castro and moved to New York City. There, Maria Teresa took ballet and singing lessons and enjoyed skiing, ice skating, and water sports. The family moved to Geneva, Switzerland, where Maria Teresa became a Swiss citizen. She and Henri married on Valentine's Day, 1981, at the Notre Dame Cathedral of Luxembourg. Castro sent her a bouquet of red roses and a sugarcane. The newlyweds launched a foundation to help those with special needs integrate into society. They welcomed 5 children: Guillaume, Felix, Louis, Alexandra, and Sebastian. In 1998, Grand Duke Jean appointed Henri Lieutenant Representative, aka Regent, meaning he assumed most of his father's constitutional powers. 2 years later, in 2000, immediately after Jean's abdication, Henri was sworn in as the new Grand Duke. At the time, all new laws required his assent. In 2008, he refused to sign a bill on euthanasia, citing his Catholic beliefs, and creating a constitutional crisis. Parliament quickly amended the constitution so that the Grand Duke must now sign all bills and has no right to object. In 2011, he decreed that the succession to the throne would be based on absolute primogeniture, so children rank in the order of succession based only on their birth order, not their gender. Now Henri focuses on diplomacy and philanthropy. Henri is a member of the International Olympic Committee, the World Health Organization, and the Charles Darwin Trust for the Galapagos Islands. Maria Theresa has been a special ambassador for UNESCO, served on the board of the International Paralympic Committee, and worked with numerous other charities. The couple enjoy spending time with their 6 grandchildren, traveling, sailing, and skiing. Henri's personal wealth is estimated at $4 billion. In 2020, a government report detailed the troubling inner workings of the palace, including high staff turnover and an atmosphere of fear. The royal family were also found to be using state funds for personal activities and expenses. In October 2024, Henri appointed his eldest son, Guillaume, as lieutenant representative. Then, in his Christmas Eve message to the nation, he announced his plans to abdicate and fully pass the throne to his son on October 3, 2025. Guillaume was born in 1981. He attended primary school in Luxembourg and boarding school in Switzerland. In 2000, Guillaume became heir apparent and hereditary Grand Duke. He attended the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst and studied philosophy, anthropology, and political science at universities in the UK and France. He joined the Council of State in 2005 and regularly represents his parents on official foreign visits. He enjoys music, football, swimming, and volleyball. He speaks Luxembourgish, French, German, Spanish, and English. During an interview for his 30th birthday in 2011, he told reporters that he was in a relationship with a, quote, dear miss, and that things had been going strong for more than a year, but they needed time to evaluate their possible future. Countess Stephanie de Lannoy was born in 1984 in Belgium. She is the youngest of 8 children born to Count Philippe de Lannoy and grew up on the Anviang family estate. The House of Lannoy has roots in the 13th century nobility of Hainaut. One branch of the family immigrated to the United States, changed their name to Delano, and are ancestors of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. She began playing piano and violin in school and discovered a love for reading. She studied German language and history at the University of Louvain and spent a year in Moscow studying Russian literature. She is fluent in Dutch, French, English, and German, and speaks a fair amount of Luxembourgish and Russian. She next moved to Berlin and worked at a foreign investment agency while earning a master's degree at Humboldt University. In 2004, while attending a party, she was introduced to Guillaume by a mutual friend. They met for a second time in 2009 and started dating. Stephanie is Guillaume's 7th cousin. The Luxembourg press were respectful, and their relationship was kept private until their engagement was announced in 2012. A few weeks before the wedding, Stephanie's mother, Alex, died suddenly of a stroke. During the ceremony at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Luxembourg, she wore her mother's engagement ring in addition to her own, and the Lannoy family diamond tiara. She draped a scarf belonging to her mother on the statue of the Virgin Mary, and the congregation observed a minute of silence. The couple kept their honeymoon a secret. The newlyweds settled into a quiet life away from the palace and shared a home in an undisclosed part of Luxembourg. They enjoyed living normally, grocery shopping, and cooking together, but they still appeared at various royal events at home and abroad. In 2018, the couple moved to London for 2 years. Guillaume attended the Royal College of Defence Studies, and Stephanie studied art history at the Sotheby's Institute. In 2020, they welcomed their first child, Charles. His grandparents met him first over video chat due to the COVID-19 pandemic. François arrived in 2023. Among their varied charitable causes, Guillaume focuses on scouting and supporting people with disabilities, and Stephanie takes an interest in elderly people, science, and the arts, and is on the board of several cultural foundations. On October 3, 2025, Grand Duke Henri followed in the tradition set by his father Jean and his grandmother Charlotte to retire and pass the throne on to the next generation. Henri, 70, signed his abdication, capping his 25-year reign. The family then processed to the neighboring Chamber of Deputies. The former and new Grand Dukes wore the khaki-green uniforms of the Luxembourg army and the yellow sash and badge of the Order of the Golden Lion of the House of Nassau. Grand Duchess Maria Theresa chose to forego the yellow sash, though she is a Dame of the Order. Perhaps it didn't go with her maroon cape dress. Stephanie wore her sash over an embroidered lavender blue gown. Guillaume, 43, swore an oath on the Constitution, officially launching his reign. In his speech, he quoted his grandmother Charlotte, "I will live the life of my people, from whom I do not want to be separated by any barrier. I will share their joys and their sufferings." The lines, first delivered in 1919 amid the First World War, draw parallels to current geopolitical tensions. The new Grand Duke will be known as Guillaume V. The previous 4 Guillaumes are often called Willem in Dutch or William in English. The changing of the throne's ceremony complete, the family appeared on the balcony of the Grand Ducal Palace to greet the crowd. Prince Charles V, now Europe's youngest royal heir apparent, and his 2-year-old brother François stole the show. That evening, royals and dignitaries in uniforms, gowns, and tiaras celebrated the new Grand Duke and Duchess at a gala dinner. Guests included King Willem, Queen Maxima, and Princess Catharina Amalia of the Netherlands, King Philippe, Queen Mathilde, and Princess Elizabeth of Belgium, and President Macron of France and his wife Brigitte. A special thank you goes to my patron, Zoe Marie. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other history videos. You can also support my work, get early access to all my multi-part series, and other perks by becoming a channel member or joining my Patreon. Thank you for watching.